Welcome to Always Real Talk's What Do I Do Landlord Tenant segment with our Landlord Tenant expert and coach, Karissa Spann. Karissa, welcome back to Always Real Talk.
Thank you so much, Kwame, for having me here on your phenomenal platform. I'm excited to join you today.
Well, look, we'll get right at it because people really enjoyed this What Do I Do segment with you because you kind of keep it real. This is Always Real Talk and you keep it real, and people walk away with things that are useful to them. And for those that are not landlords, for those that are not tenants, they have family, they have friends that are, and they're able to turn them on. I want to jump right into what's going on today. And as you well know, last time we talked, it was the beginning of the stimulus. It was the beginning of whether landlords were going to allow or not allow their tenants to not pay for a month or 2 months. And we went through that exercise. And now we're, 90 days away from that. And there are a lot of questions now that people are asking. What are the top 3 common things that you're hearing from tenants?
Well, I just want to start out by saying that we are still under the COVID-19 state of the emergency here in the District of Columbia. And essentially that means that there is still a lot of protection for tenants. And a lot of tenants don't realize that they still have rights as pertains to rent payment. Rent payments are still due, however, under the state of emergency that the mayor has now extended through July 24th. Tenants are not required to pay late fees. Landlords cannot file an eviction until 60 days after the conclusion of the emergency. And so one of the conversations that I've had with a lot of my colleagues and the landlords in the district is that they are now required to offer tenants a repayment agreement. And that essentially means, Kwame, landlords, before they even take the tenant to court, now let me just say that the courts are not open. But when the courts do open, landlords are going to be required to show that they have offered or given the tenant an opportunity to enter into a repayment agreement for minimally 12 months, unless the tenant agrees to a shorter term. So there's still some cushion for the tenants to, get back on their feet. However, with the repayment agreement, the tenants are responsible to show that the coronavirus or the COVID state of emergency impacted them financially, whether directly or indirectly. So they do have to show that their finances were impacted by this pandemic that we're in.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. You mentioned the courts are still closed. The courts will open back up soon. When the courts open back up, if I am a tenant and I would tenant that my landlord is taking me to court, and my landlord has not given me an opportunity or stretched whatever my balance is out for 12 months, right? At least give me an opportunity to take, just keep it real simple. If my rent is $100 a month and the last 90 days, it's $300, and they can take that $300 and spread that out over 12 months, and they would add that each month to my rent, and then that's one of the options for repayment.
That's correct.
Okay. And I know that this might be a tricky question, but a lot of people want to know, you have to provide some sort of hardship. Is that a letter from your employer, or what is the definition of providing a hardship letter?
So that could be a letter from the employer. If the tenant was employed and maybe they received pay stubs, or for instance, they could also provide their bank statements to show that the income that was once coming in has ceased, or, something has changed, decreased significantly. So there are ways to show it, to provide documentation. It just depends on the type of income that they had. So certainly, like I said, they could definitely get something from their employer, or just use their financial documents to show that the income is no longer coming in.
Right. Okay. And that could be a bank statement that shows that there's no money coming into the bank. That could also be something that, because I know a lot of people are asking that question. Now that is for if you are a tenant. I guess if you are a landlord, you are saying that you have to offer that option to your tenant.
That's correct.
Okay.
So once the courts are back in session, the landlords are going to be required to show the courts that they've offered their tenant the option to enter um, into a repayment agreement. And so, one of the things that I caution landlords to do is definitely document everything. Send your tenant a letter saying, Tenant A, we are inviting you or offering you the opportunity to enter into a repayment agreement. Please provide us with the documentation, but the letter must be very specific. The letter must also advise the tenant that the repayment agreement could be for 12 months. And so there are a lot of things that must go into this letter. And all of that, again, is going to be required before the courts will even hear a non payment of rent case, unfortunately.
Okay. So I just want everyone who is a tenant or people who have family members that are a tenant, or especially elderly community, many of them that are renting and don't know their rights. I want them to know also that if you are a renter or a tenant and you have not received a letter or an option to pay your, and you didn't pay your rent, let's just be clear on that. If you paid your rent, then I take it you're all good. If you didn't pay your rent, make sure that ask for a letter. Do not just get your eviction notice when the courts open up and say you're going to be put out, because a lot of people, they wait to the last minute and they, quite frankly, they don't know. That's why we're always real talk, and that's why we're bringing this valuable information with our expert coach, Karissa Spann, to really lay out what some of the rules and regulations are. Right. I want to
Mhm.
jump right into something that is taking place now. It is like 600 zillion degrees outside, which means it's very, very hot. And as you know, during the summertime, what happens? Air conditions go out. If I'm a
Absolutely.
tenant and I, have not paid my rent because of COVID-19 and I've been affected by it, um, is the landlord still responsible for the maintenance of the building while this whole epidemic is taking place?
That's a great question. That's a question I get a lot. Yes, landlords are still required to maintain a rental property that's decent, safe, and sanitary. So the same terms of the lease are still in operation. They are still required to make repairs. If the air conditioning goes out, if that is the landlord's or the housing provider's responsibility, then guess what? Yes, they are definitely required to repair the AC. Now, what happens if the tenant hasn't paid any rent? What happens if the money isn't coming in and the landlord doesn't have it? It's the landlord's responsibility to make sure that those items are working properly. And here's one of the things that's been happening. Tenants who recognize that the landlord is responsible and for whatever reason has not been making repairs, these tenants have been contacting DCRA to report these landlords. And they are still, they're not coming out, but they are conducting virtual inspections. They are still fining landlords. So landlords are being fined for not making repairs.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. Some people are not paying their rent because they're saying that the maintenance was not done on their building. Their air conditioning's been out for the last 35 days. And if that takes place, the courts open back up. Is there a requirement for them to have to pay? I guess if in fact you're in that situation, the first thing to do, are you saying the first thing to do is contact DCRA?
For tenants, yes,
For
that
tenants.
is
If I'm a tenant and something's not working, hasn't been working, and the landlord has said, "Hey, I'm not fixing it because I've been affected by COVID-19," they still have to report that to DCRA. And where I'm going with this, and my question to you is, if I'm a tenant and I couldn't pay my bill, or I could pay my rent. Let's just say I could pay my rent, but the electricity has been out or the air conditioning hasn't been working, and I don't, right? And now COVID hits. Am I still going to be required to take those back payments and spread it out over 12 months and still pay for something in which I did not get the correct service for as a tenant?
absolutely. So here's a tricky thing in this. It's not what they know, it's what they can prove. So documentation is everything. if tenants have made any attempts to contact the landlord, it would be in the best interest of that tenant to show, maybe through email or text communication, that they've tried to reach out to the landlord. So, the tenants have a responsibility as well to show that they have tried to communicate with the landlord. They have indeed requested repairs to be made. And it is unfortunate, because I recognize that a lot of tenants are impacted because landlords don't have the money if the rent, isn't coming in.
Right, right. And it goes back to making sure that people know what their rights are, right? So if you're a landlord, you should better check with DCRA, make sure you haven't done what you're supposed to do. You should double check, make sure before you actually try to take the tenant to court. If you're a tenant and you've kept proper records and you have documentation, make sure you keep that documentation so you can prove your point. I mean, right now, I know they're talking about another stimulus package. I saw that today, that the president's, fine with trying to do another one. But we don't know where that's going to take place. There are a lot of people that are very, very concerned because they're still unemployed, right? Or they haven't been back to work yet, full time, and they cannot pay their rent, right? And they have other stuff that they have to pay also. And their question is, in the next 60 days, and we all knew, 5 months or 6 months down the road, that we're all going to be faced with a dilemma, right? Either we're going to be back to work, or some of the people are never going back to work because they can't go back to their job because their job doesn't exist. And then
Yeah.
how do they handle being a tenant? And if I am someone who works every day and I have 3 or 4 apartment buildings, I'm a landlord, right? So if I'm a landlord, I'm concerned because my tenants aren't paying. And as a landlord, I need to figure out, because now I'm affected by that, because, the bank still wants their money, right? So we have to try to figure that out. Now, walk me through. You actually have something called a Landlord 6-week course that starts on July 21st. Tell us about that.
That's correct. Thank you so much for asking. I'm super excited about this program. In addition to being a landlord and tenant coach, I'm an educator. And so I coach landlords. I walk them through the process of building a property management business and brand. The 6-week course is online. It's once a week, and it walks them through all of the steps needed, showing them how to attract their ideal tenant, showing them how to market and maintain their property, all of the systems that they need in place, maintenance, operations, the lease, terms of the lease that they must and must not have. And so, I'm excited about it. It's something that I've been working on for quite a bit of time. And it does begin. I'm rolling it out July the 21st. I'm super excited about it.
Hey, we're super excited for it. Look, check it out. Once again, you see the website, www.karissaspann.com. Go to the website, check it out. It is a landlord online 6-week course, right? And you lay out July 21st, and you lay out some of the most important things that folks need to understand being a landlord. There's so many people trying to buy apartment buildings now. They're trying to find additional revenue. They have investment property, whether it's here. And the good thing about your program, the property could be anywhere. You're just teaching them the basics of what to do from a landlord perspective. So spread the word. Hey, July 21st, check her out, www.karissaspann.com. Also, you can find her on Facebook Live. She's doing Facebook. I think it's every Monday.
It's every Monday at 7 p.m. on my Facebook page, Karissa.Spann.
That's right. You see it online, Karissa Spann. Go to it every Monday. Check her out. She's got some hot stuff. Of course, she's our landlord and tenant expert who comes on to talk about what? What do I do? Well, Karissa, thanks. We'll see you next time. If it's always real talk, it's going to be real.
Thank you so much.